Ambassador Thale had made this journey many times before. His ship moved through the darkness of space toward the small blue planet called Earth. It was a routine visit. Nothing special. The humans were a minor species, after all. They had joined the Galactic Council only 200 years ago, and in that short time, they had done nothing remarkable. They were loud. They were emotional. They lived such brief lives that most elder species wondered why they even bothered to exist. Thale's ship entered the Sol system, and immediately, something felt wrong. There was nothing there, no. Orbital stations spinning around Earth, no communication signals filling the empty space, no ships moving between the 12 worlds that humans had claimed as their own. Thale checked his instruments again and again, but the readings remained the same. The entire human civilization, all 89 billion of them, had vanished without leaving a single trace behind. Thale sent his report to the Unified Council of Species, expecting panic. Instead, he received indifference. Councillor Dren of the Korath Empire laughed when he heard the news. He was a tall creature with gray skin and cold eyes that had seen 1,000 worlds burn. The Korath were conquerors. They had built their empire on the bones of weaker species, and they had never respected humanity. Perhaps they finally destroyed themselves, Dren said to the assembled council. It was inevitable. They were always fighting among themselves. Good riddance, I say. The galaxy is better without their noise. The other council members nodded in agreement. The Verizians, ancient beings of light and logic, saw no reason to investigate further. The humans had contributed nothing of value. Their disappearance was simply a curiosity, nothing more. But not everyone had forgotten the humans so easily. In the military archives of Earth's abandoned defense ministry, automated systems continued to function. Deep underground, where no alien scanner could reach, computers hummed quietly in the darkness. A single message played on repeat, broadcasting on a frequency that no species in the galaxy monitored. Phase 1 complete. Awaiting final authorization. The message had been programmed 12 years ago, by people who knew this day would come. Admiral Suen Park had been a young captain back then. He remembered the day everything changed. He remembered standing on the bridge of his ship as the Korath fleet descended on Colony Vigo 7. The humans there had done nothing wrong. They had simply built their homes too close to what the Korath considered their territory. The Korath did not negotiate. They did not warn. They simply attacked. For 3 days, their ships bombarded the colony from orbit. Suwan watched helplessly as cities turned to ash. He listened to the screams on the communication channels until the screams stopped. 2,300,000 humans died on Vega 27. Men, women, children. The youngest victim was only 4 months old when the massacre ended. The humans begged the Galactic Council for justice. They presented evidence. They showed recordings of the slaughter. They named every single person who had died. The Council ruled it a proportional response. Councillor Dren had smiled when he delivered the verdict. The humans violated territorial expansion laws, he said. The Korath acted within their rights. Case dismissed. Suen Park never forgot that. Smile, standing beside him that day, was a young lieutenant named Minho. Quan Minho had been born on Vega 7. His wife Jisoo and his 3-year-old daughter Sumin were still on the colony when the attack began. He had tried to reach them. He had flown his shuttle through the bombardment, dodging Korath weapons fire. Desperate to save his family, he arrived too late. Minho found the ruins of his home still burning. He found the small pink blanket his daughter had loved, now covered in ash. He searched for hours, calling their names, until other survivors pulled him away. Suen Park stood with Minho as he watched his world burn. Neither man spoke. There were no words for what they felt. But in that silence, something was born. A promise. A plan. A patience that would span decades. Dr. Unibeek was also on Vega 7 that day. She was a young physicist, brilliant beyond her years, working at the colony's research station. She survived only because she had been in an underground laboratory when the attack began. When she emerged, she found her colleagues dead, her friends, her mentors. Everyone she had worked with for years, gone in an instant. Yuna did not cry. She did not scream. She simply looked up at the sky where the Karath ships still hovered. And she made a decision. She would find a way to make them pay. In the years that followed, Yuna became the chief scientist of a project that officially did not exist. It was called Project Exodus, and its true purpose was known only to a handful of people. The Council believed it was a simple evacuation plan, a backup in case humanity ever faced extinction. They were wrong. Project Exodus was humanity's greatest weapon. Director Heian Choi was the architect of everything. She ran the Human Intelligence Division, a network of spies and analysts that had spent 2 centuries studying every species in the galaxy. She knew their secrets. She knew their weaknesses. She knew exactly how to bring them to their knees. Heian had never trusted the aliens. From the day humanity joined the Council, she had seen the contempt in their eyes. They called humans primitive. They called humans brief. They called humans insignificant. And Heian had smiled and nodded and pretended to agree. But she was always watching, always learning, always preparing. When the disappearance finally happened, it was perfect. Every human in the galaxy vanished at the exact same moment. Every ship, every station, every colony simply stopped existing. The aliens searched for years and found nothing. No bodies, no wreckage, no clues. They assumed humanity was gone forever. They were wrong. Far away. In a region of space that no map showed, a massive fleet drifted in perfect formation. 10,000 ships, dark and silent, waiting in the void. On the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Suin Park stood for a tactical display showing every major alien world. His hair had turned gray over the years. His face was lined with age and sorrow. But his eyes still held the same fire they had held on the day he watched Vega 7 burn. Behind him, Captain Minho Quan entered the bridge. He was older now, too. The young lieutenant, who had lost everything, had become a decorated war hero. The commander of the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. The ship was called the ESS Retribution, and it had been designed for one purpose only. How much longer? Minho asked quietly. Suan did not turn around. He continued to stare at the display, at the worlds that had laughed at humanity's pain, at the species that had called their suffering acceptable. Soon, he said, let them feel what our children felt. Let them know what it means to wait for death in the dark. Somewhere in the silence of space, 18.9 billion humans held their breath. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. 6 months had passed since humanity disappeared, and the galaxy had already begun to forget them. The Council continued its work. Trade ships moved between the stars. Elder species discussed politics and resources and the endless pursuit of power. The empty human worlds became nothing more than a strange footnote in galactic history, but then strange things started to happen. It began on the frontier of the Korath Empire. Military Outpost 17 was a heavily defended station, home to 5,000 soldiers and a fleet of warships. One day, it simply stopped responding. The Empire sent a patrol to investigate. They found the outpost dark and empty. No bodies, no damage, no signs of battle. The soldiers and ships had vanished, just like the humans had. The Korath commanders dismissed it as a malfunction. Perhaps a disease had spread. Perhaps the soldiers had deserted. There had to be a rational explanation. Then Outpost 23 went silent. Then Outpost 31. Then 40 more in rapid succession. Across the galaxy, Varisian trading vessels began reporting strange problems. Their navigation systems would malfunction near the former human territories. Ships would suddenly find themselves off course, drifting toward regions of space that their maps showed as empty. Some vessels disappeared entirely, never to be seen again. The galactic communication network started experiencing brief moments of interference. Every 72 hours, exactly on schedule, static would fill every channel for precisely 3 seconds. Engineers searched for the source but found nothing. The interference seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Fear began to spread. Counselor. Dren grew tired of the rumors and complaints. He ordered his analysts to investigate the human disappearance properly, hoping to prove once and for all that there was no connection between these events. He assigned a young Korath named Veln to lead the investigation. Veln was different from most of his kind. He was curious where others were dismissive. He asked questions where others made assumptions. He had always been fascinated by humans, by their strange customs and their fierce emotions. When the assignment came, he accepted it eagerly. He started with the human homeworld. Earth was a haunting place now. The city stood empty, but undamaged. Buildings remained intact. Vehicles sat in streets as if their owners had simply stepped away for a moment. Food still sat on tables, long since rotted. Personal belongings remained exactly where they had been left. It was as if every human had vanished in the middle of their daily lives. Veln searched through government buildings, looking for answers. He found something disturbing in the data archives. Every scientific database, every research file, every piece of technical information had been wiped exactly 47 seconds before the disappearance. The deletion was precise and thorough. Someone had planned this. He dug deeper and found more patterns. Human embassies across the galaxy had emptied on the exact same day, down to the same minute. Embassy staff had filed normal reports, attended routine meetings, and then simply walked away. Their personal items were left behind. Their work was left unfinished. It was coordinated on a scale that seemed impossible. Every human ship, civilian and military, had vanished at the same moment. Traffic control records showed thousands of vessels moving normally 1 second and gone the next. There was no debris. There were no distress signals. They had not been destroyed. They had simply ceased to exist in any place that sensors could detect. Villain submitted his preliminary report to Counselor Dren. The counselor was not pleased. You were suggesting that the humans planned their own disappearance, Dren said coldly. That is absurd. They were a primitive species. They could barely manage their own colonies. They could not have orchestrated something like this. With respect, Counselor Velm replied carefully, the evidence suggests otherwise. The timing was too precise. The coordination was too perfect. This was not an accident or a disaster. This was intentional. Dren waved his hand dismissively. Continue your investigation, but do not waste my time with conspiracy theories. The humans are gone. That is all that matters. But Veln could not let it go. He began researching human history, looking for clues that others had ignored. He read about their wars, their struggles, their endless capacity for both cruelty and kindness. He learned about their music, their art, their stories of heroes who stood against impossible odds, and he learned about Vega-7. The massacre had been buried in official records, reduced to a few dry paragraphs about territorial disputes. But Veln found other sources. Human survivors had recorded testimonies before the disappearance. They described the horror in detail. They named every person who had died. They showed images of the destruction of burning cities, of children's bodies in the ruins. Veln watched these recordings alone in his quarters. And for the first time in his life, he felt something like shame. He had been a child when Vega-7 happened. He had not known. But his people had done this. His government had approved this. And the council, the body that was supposed to maintain justice in the galaxy, had called it acceptable. Veln understood now why the humans might have wanted to disappear, but he still did not understand how. He continued searching through the static that plagued the communication networks. Analyzing the interference that occurred every 72 hours, most analysts had dismissed it as random noise. Veln suspected it was something more. He was right. Hidden within the static was a message. It was encoded in an ancient human language, one that predated their space travel by thousands of years. Veln spent weeks decoding it, comparing it to historical texts, running it through translation programs. When he finally understood the message, his blood ran cold. 2 words. Just 2 words repeated endlessly in the void. Remember Vega. Veln stared at the translation for a long time. He thought about the missing outposts. He thought about the vanishing ships. He thought about the precision of the human disappearance, and slowly, terribly, a realization began to form in his mind. The humans had not disappeared because they were weak. They had disappeared because they were. Preparing, Velney tried to warn Counselor Dren, but his warnings were ignored. He tried to present his findings to the council, but they laughed at him. A junior analyst claiming that humanity was somehow responsible for the strange events across the galaxy. It was ridiculous. It was impossible. Humans were primitive. Humans were insignificant. Humans were gone. But Vel knew the truth. Somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity was waiting. They had been patient for 200 years, smiling and nodding, while the galaxy treated them like insects. They had watched. They had learned. They had planned. And now they were ready. Veln looked up at the stars from his window, wondering which patch of darkness hid the human fleet. He wondered how many ships they had built in secret. He wondered what weapons they had developed while pretending to be weak. Most of all, he wondered if there was still time to stop what was coming. Deep in his heart, he already knew the answer. It was too late. The humans had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment. They had suffered in silence, endured humiliation, buried their dead with quiet dignity. They had done everything the galaxy asked of them, followed every rule, accepted every insult, and the galaxy had responded by burning their children. Now, the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. The silence was about to end. 1 year had passed since humanity vanished, and the galaxy was falling apart. 34 Korath outposts had gone dark. 3 Varisian colony worlds had lost their defense systems without explanation. Ships vanished from trade routes daily. The Council's primary communication hub, a station that had operated perfectly for 10,000 years, suffered a catastrophic failure that no engineer could explain. Panic spread through the stars like a disease. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia now looked over their shoulders in fear. They sent fleets to patrol empty space, searching for an enemy they could not see. They built new weapons and fortified their borders. But nothing they did seemed to make any difference. The attacks continued, silent and precise. Striking where defenses were weakest, Counselor Dren refused to admit what was happening. He blamed pirates. He blamed malfunctions. He blamed rival species trying to destabilize the Empire. He blamed everyone except the obvious answer, but Investigator Veln had not stopped searching. He had become obsessed with uncovering the truth. He spent months studying human history, reading their literature, analyzing their technology. The more he learned, the more disturbed he became. Humans were not the primitive species the galaxy believed them to be. They never had been. From the moment they joined the Council, humans had played a role. They pretended to be simple. They pretended to be weak. They asked questions that seemed naive, questions that gave them access to information about every species in the galaxy. They traded technology that appeared inferior, but which allowed them to study alien systems in detail. For 200 years, humanity had been watching, learning, waiting. Villain discovered records of human achievements that had been dismissed or ignored by the Council. Human scientists had made breakthroughs in fields that elder species considered impossible. Human engineers had built prototypes of technologies that should not have existed for another 1,000 years. Human soldiers had trained in combat techniques that no alien had ever seen. And then there was Project Exodus. Villain had heard the name before, in fragmented reports and classified files. The Council believed it was simply a backup plan, a way for humans to evacuate if their worlds were ever threatened. But Vel now understood the truth. Project Exodus was not an evacuation plan. It was a transformation. Dr. Unibeek, the brilliant physicist who had survived the Vega 7 massacre, had spent decades developing technology that seemed like magic. She had found a way to hide entire fleets from every known sensor. She had created communication systems that could not be intercepted. She had designed weapons that could disable any ship, any station, any planetary defense system with a single command. The humans had not disappeared because they were running away. They had disappeared because they no longer needed to pretend. They had everything they needed. Now they were simply choosing when to strike. Velen found the final piece of the puzzle in an abandoned human intelligence, a facility on a colony world that everyone else had overlooked. The building was unremarkable, a simple office complex that had once housed what appeared to be a minor administrative department. But hidden beneath the surface was something much more important. Director Toyan Choi's final intelligence report. It had been left there intentionally, Velen realized. Hidden where only someone who was truly searching would find it. A message for whoever was smart enough to understand. Velen read the report with trembling hands. "You called us insects," the document began. "You burned our children and called it justice. You laughed when we wept and mocked us when we asked for mercy. For 200 years, we smiled and nodded and watched. We learned your secrets. We mapped your weaknesses. We counted your ships, your soldiers, your worlds." Velen continued reading, his hearts beating faster with every word. "And when the time came, we disappeared. Not because we feared you, but because we no longer needed to pretend. The silence you hear is not our absence. It is the sound of 18.9 billion humans holding their breath before the storm. You thought you knew us. You were wrong. You thought we were weak. You were wrong. You thought you could hurt us without consequence. You were very, very wrong." The report ended with a simple statement. "We remember every name. We remember every face. We remember every child who died screaming while the galaxy looked away. And now, finally, you will remember us." Velen sat in the darkness for a long time, holding the document that spelled doom for his people. He thought about running to Counselor Dren, about showing him the proof that humanity was not gone, that they were coming back, that everything the galaxy knew was about to change, but he knew it would make no difference. Dren would not listen. The Council would not listen. They had spent 2 centuries dismissing humans as unimportant. They would not change their minds now, far away. In a place that no map could locate, Admiral Suwon Park reviewed the final preparations. The fleet was ready. 10,000 ships, each one equipped with technology that made them invisible to alien sensors. 18.9 billion humans spread across secret colonies in uncharted space. Waiting for the order that would change everything, Dr. Unibeak stood beside him on the bridge of the flagship. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She had spent her entire life building the weapons that would bring justice to the galaxy. Now, finally, her work was complete. "The infiltration programs are in place," she reported. "Every major alien system has been compromised. Defense grids, communication networks, power generators, all of it. We can shut down any world we choose, any time we choose." Suwon nodded slowly. "In our own systems? They cannot trace us?" "Impossible," Una replied with quiet pride. "I made sure of that personally. To their sensors, we do not exist. We are ghosts." Captain Minho Kwan entered the bridge, carrying a data tablet with the latest intelligence reports. His face was hard, his eyes cold. The young man who had wept for his family on Vega 7 was gone. In his place stood a warrior who had spent 12 years preparing for this moment. "The Council is in chaos," Minho said. "They have no idea what is happening. Some of them still think we are gone forever. Others are starting to suspect, but they do not want to believe." Suwon allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Let them feel what our people felt when the Korath came." He turned to face the tactical display, where the positions of every major alien fleet were marked in glowing lights. The Korath Empire, the Verizian Collective, the Council headquarters. All of them vulnerable, all of them exposed. 200 years, Suwon said quietly. "We waited 200 years for this. We buried our pride. We swallowed our anger. We let them think we were nothing. And now, he pressed a button on the command console, and the fleet began to move. 10,000 ships, emerging from the darkness like vengeful spirits, heading toward a galaxy that had forgotten what humanity could do." "Now," Suwon finished, We show them who we really are. Director Haeon's Choi's voice came through the communication system. Calm and controlled as always. Phase 2 beginning. All units proceed to assign targets. Remember Vega? Remember our children? Remember why we fight. Across the hidden fleet. 18.9 billion humans heard. The words and understood. The waiting was over. The storm was about to begin. The Korath. Homeworld had never been attacked. In 10,000 years of galactic history, no species had ever been foolish enough to challenge the Empire on its own ground. The Korath Defense Fleet was the largest in the galaxy. 5,000 warships armed with weapons that could crack planets in half. They were invincible. Everyone knew this. On the morning of the attack, Admiral Suwon Park proved everyone wrong. The human fleet emerged from nothing. One moment, the space around the Korath homeworld was empty. The next moment, it was filled with ships. Dark, sleek vessels that moved with impossible speed and grace. They appeared on no sensors. They triggered no alarms. By the time the Korath realized they were under attack, it was already too late. The battle lasted for hours. It should not have been a battle at all. The Korath outnumbered the human attackers 3-1. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their crews more experienced. By every measure of conventional warfare, they should have won easily. But humans did not fight conventional wars. Dr. Unibeek's infiltration programs activated the moment the fighting began. Korath ships found their targeting systems disabled. Their shields flickered and died. Their engines sputtered and failed. Captains screamed orders into communication systems that no longer worked. Crews watched in horror as their mighty warships became helpless. Metal coffins drifting in space, human vessels moved through the chaos like shadows, striking with surgical precision. They did not waste ammunition on random targets. They knew exactly where to hit, exactly how much force to use. Every shot was planned. Every attack was calculated. The Korath fleet fell apart like a tower made of sand. When the shooting stopped, not a single Korath warship remained operational. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Verision Council headquarters. The ancient station that had governed galactic politics for millennia was captured without a single shot being fired. Human operatives had disabled its security systems weeks ago. When the assault teams arrived, they found the council members cowering in their chambers. Surrounded by guards whose weapons no longer functioned, 19 alien worlds were blockaded simultaneously. Human fleets appeared in orbit, weapons trained on population centers, demanding immediate surrender. Most worlds complied within hours. The few that resisted quickly learned the cost of defiance, but the humans did not massacre civilians. They did not bomb cities from orbit. They did not slaughter innocents to make a point. Their targets were specific. Military installations, government leadership. Those directly responsible for crimes against humanity. This confused the aliens greatly. The Korath had always ruled through terror. When they conquered a world, they burned it. They killed millions to ensure obedience. They believed that brutality was the only language the galaxy understood. Humans spoke a different language. Captain Minho Kwan led the assault on the Korath Command Center personally. His ship, the ESS Retribution, cut through the planet's defenses like a knife through paper. Landing craft deployed ground forces into the heart of the enemy capital. Minho walked through the burning streets with his rifle in his hands. Searching for one man, he found Counselor Dren hiding in his private chambers. The mighty Korath leader. The being who had laughed at human suffering and called genocide acceptable was curled in a corner, whimpering with fear. His guards lay unconscious around him, disabled by weapons they could not see or understand. His communication devices were dead. His panic button produced nothing but silence. Minho stood over him and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No triumph. Only a cold emptiness where his rage used to live. 2,300,000, Minho said quietly. That is how many you killed on Vega 7. I remember every name. I remember every face. My wife was named Jisoo. My daughter was named Sumin. She was 3 years old. She liked to pick flowers and sing songs about stars. Dren looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. "Please," he whispered. "I was following orders." The council approved the action. "I had no choice." "There is always a choice," Minho replied. "You chose to kill children. You chose to laugh at our pain. You chose to call our suffering acceptable. Now you will choose to live with the consequences." He did not kill Dren. That would have been too easy, too quick. Instead, he placed the counselor under arrest and escorted him to a human prison ship. Dren would face trial for his crimes. He would hear the names of everyone he had murdered. He would see the faces of the children he had burned. And then he would spend the rest of his long life. Remembering, Dr. Unibeek broadcast a message to the galaxy as the attacks continued. Her face appeared on every screen. Her voice sounded through every speaker. For the first time in 200 years, humanity spoke directly to the species that had wronged them. "We did not want this," she said. "We asked only for peace. We asked only for a place among the stars. We asked only for our children to grow up safe and free. You answered by burning our worlds and calling it justice. You answered by murdering millions and calling it acceptable. You answered by treating us like insects to be crushed beneath your feet." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder. "So we adapted. We learned. We prepared. For 200 years, we studied your weaknesses while you laughed at our supposed inferiority. We built weapons you cannot comprehend while you dismissed our scientists as primitive. We created technologies you cannot match while you assumed we had nothing to offer." Behind her, tactical displays showed the collapse of alien defenses across the galaxy. World after world falling to human forces. Fleet after fleet surrendering without hope of victory. "This is not revenge," Una continued. "This is justice. We do not seek to destroy you. We do not seek to conquer you. We seek only to ensure that W had happened to us can never happen again. To anyone ever." Her final words echoed through the stars. "You thought you knew us. You were wrong. You thought we were weak. You were wrong. You thought we would simply disappear and be forgotten. You were very, very wrong. Humanity remembers. And now, so will you." The broadcast ended, but its message remained. Admiral Sawan Park watched from the bridge of his flagship as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Victory after victory. Surrender after surrender. The war was proceeding exactly as planned. Human casualties were minimal. Civilian casualties among the alien species were almost zero. Ambassador Thale, the Varisian who had first discovered humanity's disappearance, was brought before him as a prisoner of war. Unlike most aliens, Thal did not beg or threaten. He simply stood in silence, his luminous form dim with exhaustion and defeat. "You could have done this at any time," Thale said finally. "You had the power. Why did you wait? Why did you let us believe you were weak?" Suwan considered the question for a long moment before answering. "Because we wanted to believe the galaxy could be just," he said. "Because we wanted to believe there was another way. We tried diplomacy. We tried patience. We tried following your rules. And you responded by killing our children and calling it legal." He turned to face Thale directly, his old eyes filled with sorrow rather than hatred. "We did not want to become this. But you taught us that mercy is weakness. You taught us that kindness is foolishness. You taught us that the only thing the galaxy respects is power." He paused. "So now we have shown you our power. The question is, what happens next?" Thale had no answer. Neither did anyone else. The storm had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 years had passed since humanity returned, and the galaxy had been transformed. The old council was gone. In its place stood the Tribunal of Remembrance, a new governing body built on a simple principle that the previous rulers had never understood: accountability. Those who committed crimes would face judgment. Those who followed orders blindly would face truth. Those who were innocent would be freed. The trials began on the anniversary of humanity's return. Counselor Dren stood before the tribunal in chains, his gray skin pale, his arrogant bearing broken. For 6 months he had listened to testimony from human survivors. He had heard the names of every person who died on Vega 7. He had seen recordings of the massacre, of children screaming, of families burning, of a civilization being erased for the crime of building homes in the wrong place. He had tried to defend himself at first. He had claimed he was following orders. He had argued that the council had approved his actions. He had insisted that he was not personally responsible for what happened. The tribunal was not impressed. "You signed the order," the human judge said calmly. "You watched the bombardment from your command ship. You celebrated the destruction with your officers. You called the death of 2,300,000 people a successful operation. These are facts. They are documented. They cannot be denied." Dren had nothing to say. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was life imprisonment on a barren world at the edge of explored space. Dren would live in the same conditions as the refugees of Vega 7 had lived in after the massacre. He would eat the same rations. He would sleep in the same temporary shelters. He would experience, for the rest of his long life, the consequences of what he had done. Some argued that death would have been more merciful. That was exactly the point. Not everyone faced such harsh judgment. Investigator Veln, the young Korath analyst who had tried to uncover the truth, was pardoned for his efforts. He had been the only member of his species to question the official narrative. He had been the only one to search for answers when everyone else preferred comfortable lies. Admiral Suan Park met with him personally. "You tried to warn them," Suan said. "They did not listen, but you tried. That matters." Veln bowed his head in shame. "I should have tried harder. I should have found a way to make them understand. Perhaps if I had—" "Perhaps nothing," Suan interrupted gently. "You were one voice against an empire. You did what you could. Now you have a chance to do more." Humanity offered Veln a position as a liaison between species, a bridge builder who could help heal the wounds of the past. He accepted without hesitation. It was the least he could do. On the anniversary of the Vega 7 massacre, Admiral Suan Park unveiled a memorial that would stand for eternity. It covered an entire moon, billions of tons of stone carved with names. 2,300,000 names, every single person who had died in the attack. Children and elders, scientists and artists, farmers and teachers. Ordinary people who had done nothing wrong except exist in a place that someone else wanted, Captain. Minho Quan stood before the wall where his family's names were carved. Jisoo Quan, Sumin Quan. He traced the letters with his fingers, feeling the stone beneath his touch. 12 years of rage and planning and waiting had led to this moment. The war was over. Justice had been served, but his wife and daughter were still gone. He did not cry. He had used up all his tears long ago. He simply stood in silence, remembering the sound of his daughter's laughter, the warmth of his wife's smile, the life they should have had together. "I did it," he whispered to the stone. "I made them pay. I made sure they could never hurt anyone else." He paused, his voice breaking. "I hope you can forgive me for taking so long." Director Heian Choi addressed the galaxy one final time. She stood on a platform orbiting the memorial moon, her image broadcast to every world, every station, every ship in explored space. Behind her, the endless field of names stretched to the horizon, a testament to loss and remembrance. "We could have destroyed you," she said to the watching universe. "We had the power to end every species that wronged us. Our weapons could crack planets. Our technology could disable any defense. Our fleets could have burned your worlds the same way you burned ours." She let the words hang in the air for a moment. "But vengeance was never our purpose. We wanted justice. We wanted to be seen not as insects to be crushed, but as beings worthy of dignity. We wanted our children to be remembered. We wanted the galaxy to understand that actions have consequences, that cruelty has costs, that no species is so powerful that it can escape accountability." She gestured at the memorial behind her. "These are the people you killed. These are the names you tried to erase. We carved them in stone that will last 1,000,000 years, so that no one will ever forget." Not us. Not you. Not the generations that come after. Her voice softened. The war is over. Not because we won, though we did. Not because you lost, though you did. The war is over because we choose to end it. We choose to believe that the galaxy can change. We choose to hope that the species who wronged us can learn from their mistakes. She extended her hands, palms open, a gesture of peace. Humanity extends its hand once more. We offer trade. We offer cooperation. We offer friendship, but we also offer a warning. If you ever again threaten our people, if you ever again burn our children, if you ever again mistake our mercy for weakness, we will not disappear. We will not hide. We will not wait for the galaxy to notice our pain. Her eyes hardened. We will simply end you. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. The galaxy chose years past. Wounds healed. Trust was rebuilt, slowly and carefully. One conversation at a time, Dr. Unibeek retired to a small house on a restored Vega 27. The colony had been rebuilt from nothing, its cities rising from the ashes like phoenixes. New families lived where old families had died. New children played in parks that had once been killing fields. Life continued, as it always did. Una spent her days in her garden, growing flowers that reminded her of her old colleagues, the ones who had died in the massacre. She was old now, her hands wrinkled, her steps slow, but she was at peace. She had done what she set out to do. She had given humanity a future. One afternoon, a small group of children wandered into her garden. They were playing some kind of game, chasing each other between the flower beds. Most of them were human, but among them was a young Koroth, his gray skin marked with the patterns of a child barely out of infancy. The Koroth child stopped when he saw Una watching. He looked uncertain, perhaps afraid. His people were not always welcome on human worlds, even now. Una smiled at him gently. "Come here, little one. Would you like to see the flowers?" The child approached cautiously. "My teacher says humans disappeared a long time ago," he said. "She says you went away and then came back. Why did you disappear?" Una considered the question for a long moment. How do you explain decades of pain and planning to a child? How do you describe the weight of loss that drove an entire species to vanish from the galaxy? "We did not disappear," she said finally. "We just needed the galaxy to open its eyes. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the furthest. Sometimes you have to stop talking before people start listening." The child thought about this. "Are you still angry?" he asked. Una looked at him, at his innocent face, at the future he represented. A future where Koroth and human children could play together. A future where the mistakes of the past did not have to repeat forever. "No," she said softly. "I am not angry anymore. I am hopeful." Above the memorial moon, the ESS Vega's memory drifted in eternal silence. The great warship had been decommissioned after the war, preserved as a museum for future generations. Visitors came from across the galaxy to walk its corridors, to see the bridge where Admiral Suwan Park had commanded humanity's return, to read the names carved into its halls. A plaque hung near the main entrance, its words a reminder of everything that had happened and everything that had been learned. Humanity asked only for a place among the stars. When that was denied, they built their own. When their children were slaughtered, they wept, and then they planned. This ship stands as a reminder. Never mistake silence for weakness, patience for submission, or mercy for lack of strength. Humanity remembers. Below the plaque, someone had added a smaller inscription. No one knew who had written it, but everyone agreed it captured the truth perfectly. They called us weak. They called us brief. They called us forgettable. They were wrong. And far across the galaxy, in a garden on a world that had once been ashes, an old woman and a young child sat together among the flowers. Watching the sun set on a new beginning, the galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity would make sure it never forgot.